Hello everybody, my name is Dan, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank Ash and his wife Barb and everybody else who got involved in setting up WordCamp Cape Town. A lot of work goes into these events, so thanks to those guys, and thanks to you guys for making the effort to come along and to hear me speak today. So I am in the business of creating innovative products around WordPress, and everything I do is pretty much WordPress-centric in one way or another. The WP-eCommerce plugin, which lives at the Get Shopped website, it's a plugin that turns your vanilla WordPress install into a website that's capable of selling your digital and your tangible products online. We've had about we're getting close to the 2 million download mark now, and that makes us a pretty big plugin in terms of getting out there in the WordPress world. The next thing I'm working on, we've created a group deals plugin. Has everybody heard of Groupon.com? Right, so Groupon.com's great if you're in America or if you live in a big city that actually caters to you guys, because Groupon really only caters to the big cities, and so we created this little plugin called the Group Deals plugin, and it lets you convert your WP-eCommerce powered site into like a Groupon clone for your little micro niche area. And I know that Ash and the guys who are running this event, they're about to use this plugin to launch like a Groupon type website in South Africa. So we're pretty excited about that. This doesn't really look like a WordPress site, and from the whole front end side of things, it's not. It's an HTML5 game creation tool, and but it uses WordPress in the back end to store everything. So all of the game objects that you have on the left that people use to draw their game on the main stage, all of that stuff uses WordPress custom post types and WordPress taxonomies, and you name it. It's quite a unique use of WordPress, we like to think, and it's just saved us so much time. Like if we were to have done this bespoke and written our own game creation software, it would have taken us months and months and months, and we would have had to have written user interface to enable us to upload everything. But because it's WordPress, it comes for free, and it was just so easy for us to do. The whole game side of it is another story that we're not talking about today. The WP Paintbrush, this is another product I'm involved in, and it's a piece of software, or it's a theme framework, if you like, that you can use to create themes using a drag and drop interface. And we built this theme using the tool in a couple of hours. So it's we really see it as something that people can use to speed up the development of themes significantly. Who's seen this? Has everybody seen the 20 things I learned about browsers and the web? This it's an HTML5 book made by Google, and it is one of the most. Not often do I see a website these days that makes me just go wow, but this did, and it's not a WordPress thing yet. It uses the Google App Engine behind the scenes to store information. But we're busy in the process of stripping out all of the Google App stuff and turning it into a WordPress theme, and it's just a beautiful thing. And we sort of see this type of website UI as being the future of how people navigate around the web. Like if anybody's seen Google Catalogs, that will give you an idea of kind of where we want to go with this sort of stuff. It's somewhere in between. For me, Google Catalogs is definitely worth a Google search. For me, it's like the future of online shopping. I get to travel a lot. If I don't travel, well, you can see where we are. We're in the middle of nowhere. We're the closest country to the Antarctic. It's freezing, it's cold, and it's miserable, and it's just hard to get out there. And I like to be amongst it all as much as I can. And so I've gone to lots of WordCamps around the world, and it's not just about me preaching to you guys about our plugin. It's about, for me, the business is about learning what other markets actually need. And recently, to give you an example, I was in Malaysia, and I went to a WordCamp there. And the most common form of selling online in Malaysia is a technique called blog shopping. And so basically, they'll set up a blogger.com website. They will upload images. They'll put a price, a phone number. They'll call each other up, and they will physically meet one another, and they will do a transaction. I was baffled. I could not believe that this was, a common way and a common means of doing business in a country like that. So we went there, and we introduced them to the idea that you can do things a lot more automated than that, and we're slowly working through some of the issues with them. They've got payment gateway companies, they've got shipping companies, but what they didn't have was an awareness. And so the users, the people who have stuff to sell, just aren't aware that there are better ways to sell. On the website, the WordCamp website, where it talks about what I'm going to be speaking on, it sort of said that I was going to do like a little example and show you guys me installing a WP-eCommerce site, but I thought that's complicated sometimes, because if your internet connection goes down or something, it can be embarrassing for me. So we basically did a little recording, and we sped it up, and it's the 5-minute install challenge in 1 minute with music. So I'll play that. And this is just for any of you non-believers that think... I'm not going to dance like a monkey either. There you go. So if you can type really quick and move your mouse like magic.
Is that on Vimeo?
Yeah.
Can you tweet that so you can...
Yeah, can you tweet that? Can somebody tweet that? So yeah, I do quite a lot of stuff in the WordPress space, but for the most part, I spend my time... bugger. Working on the WP-eCommerce plugin. I'm not really a developer. I'm the project lead, and I just come up with ideas and whip the stick, and then when I go away, I get ignored completely, and the office gets turned into a complete shambles. But hey, that's all okay. So this is your vanilla WordPress install before they released 2011, and so we're all about creating websites that look more like this and helping people do things like sell tickets to events like that. And that was to the WordCamp San Francisco meetup last year. This website, icondoc.com, is probably another one of my favorite examples of what a WordPress e-commerce plugin can do. The guy Nick La, whose site this is, he's an icon creator, and he came up with the whole drop shop and product slider. They're like add-on plugins now that we sell on our website. The Michael Greco website. This website I'm showing because it doesn't actually use WP-eCommerce, but it does use WordPress. And it was made by a friend of mine from the States. And I just wanted to illustrate that, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And these guys just use PayPal buy now buttons. And regardless of whether or not you use an e-commerce plugin, you can still sell online using WordPress just by using your PayPal buy now buttons. So, in 2005, we created the world's first e-commerce plugin. And it was very much a serendipitous event. We had a client that wanted to sell plumbing manuals online. And we'd built them a website using WordPress, of course. And they gave us the rights to keep the software and keep the code. And we released that code. And at that point, pretty much our whole lives, everyone at Instinct, it just completely flip-sided our business and everything changed. We suddenly went from a company that was looking after a handful of clients that we sort of would handpick and choose to like this crazy world of open source sort of software where we were opening up the floodgates to thousands or hundreds of thousands of people who would be using our software. And Tom, the original developer, had a thing for praying mantises. It was quite funny. But anyway, so that was the first significant event, and probably in my professional career was launching the e-commerce plugin and putting it online and making it available for download. The second most significant event for us was going GPL, and initially we didn't go GPL because we were afraid that it would cannibalize our market, well, our revenue stream. And it was the first decent revenue stream, if I'm to be honest, that we'd had. Being a web development company in Wellington back home was hard yakka. There were lots and lots of other people doing this. With every 9 months, a new course would graduate in one of these web dev sort of schools, and a new web development company would pop up. So for us, being a web development company was no longer a good idea, and it wasn't sustainable. So going to GPL and just giving it all away open slather, we thought was kind of like a scary thing. But then in Sydney, WordCamp 2008, I met with Matt Mullenweg, and he sort of shoulder tapped me and said, "Dan, we have to your software has to go GPL, because if it doesn't, it's not allowed in the WordPress.org repository." And so that kind of sealed the deal. It was like, right, we're doing this. And we launched our software. We announced going GPL at the Sydney WordCamp, and it was a massive thing. All of my fears were losing my voice a little. All of my fears were completely wow. Hold on. Can I have a water?
Drink out the beer bottle.
Splendid.
Yeah. So my fears were unfounded. And we went through a phase of significant growth through going GPL. And my advice to anybody that's looking at setting up a plugin to potentially sell online or give away online, it's up to you, is to go GPL. And because you get the whole momentum of the open source community, and for us, the WordPress community is just massive, and it's not something we could do without it. In 2009, the next lot of e-commerce plugins came along. By this stage, we had already had around 250,000 downloads. And I like to think that if we hadn't existed, that would have been 250,000 people that may have used something like Zencart or WP-eCommerce or something that was non-WordPress along the way. And so we're quite proud of that fact. So along came the competition, and again, we were kind of like, oh no, what's going to happen? But it actually validated the market, and our sales increased. And I think all of the e-commerce plugins have their differences, and I think a lot of people criticize premium plugins, but I don't think this is fair, because a lot of the people in the open source world criticize selling GPL software, and that's not fair, because I think it's the premium plugins that these are the ones that have got the longevity behind them, and they've been around the longest, and they're actually sustainable. So, you compare was it the Contact Form 7 plugin to, say, Gravity Forms, one's free, one's not free, and you can really sort of tell the difference in the quality of both of these pieces of software. And it makes other people feel comfortable about using WordPress as a platform. So people who may have gone, well, actually feel a bit more comfortable with Drupal or just creating something bespoke, now can look at WordPress and go, it's going to be there for the long haul. So, WordCamp and Rebuild. Last year was a pretty cool year for us. We got to do lots of traveling. We met with the community around the world. Well, by the world, mostly America. And we got to meet quite a lot of the cool WordPress developers over there. And we managed to recruit John James Jacoboy just for about 4 months. And he's the guy who's rewritten the BBPress plugin, the BBPress forum software into a plugin. And he really helped us turn our software around. In 2010, we launched the 3.8 branch of our software, which was we cut off 50% of the file size with his help. So it's a lot leaner and meaner than what it previously was. Today we've got a pretty big open source community behind us. I like to think of it as the biggest open source community of any WordPress project outside of the Automatic family. Can anybody think of one that's actually bigger? I can't. But that's not to say it's impossible to overtake us or anything like that. The next thing we've got coming up is a marketplace and a repository for people to actually submit and sell their own plugins and themes through our infrastructure. And I like to think of it as being a pretty damn fine plugin. 2011 came the new interface, thanks to custom post types. All of the code was refactored, new user interface. We used WordPress taxonomies for categories and variations, and we use GlotPress as a tool to enable people to write translations for our software. If you go to languages.getshopped.org, you'll see that a lot of people have written translations for their countries and for their languages to work with WP-eCommerce. And what we do is when we do a new release of our software, we take those language files and we bundle them with our software so that other people can benefit from the efforts of others. Just more on the user interface. When we started, WordPress didn't have any tab user interface anywhere in the software at all. So we had to basically come up with ideas, and we had this pretty heinous tab sort of system in our settings page, And that's because there was nothing to base it off. Like it was pretty easy to do user interface for adding products because there's a user interface for that. We just basically take the add post user interface and duplicate that, and we've got add products. But for this sort of stuff, there was just nothing. So as WordPress itself evolves, it becomes easier, I suppose is what I'm saying, for us to actually make our software a more WordPress-esque type experience for our users. Support. So, actually, we should do a prize for whoever knows what TV show that's from.
Oh, yes.
IT crowd. Who was first? Somebody over there was. Talk to me afterwards and we'll give you a free copy of our developer pack. So the support forums, support was like crazy for us. We sort of launched this software and we thought it would be pretty sweet. We might get a couple of people messaging us saying, can you help us out with this or that? But when you start to have like the hundreds of thousands of downloads, it suddenly becomes really crazy. And we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. In fact, we started off with just a blog post. Like within weeks, that blog post was like miles long. And we're like, oh shit, what are we going to do? We need a forum. So we kind of like just, we installed the BBPress plugin. And, well, not the plugin back then, but we set up a BBPress website. And that kind of helped us manage and help our users. These days, we've replied to over 13,466 replies, and there are over 7,500 resolved threads in our premium support forum. And still, we get people saying, why aren't you answering our support questions? It's hard. We do the best we can with the resources we have. And I guess that's one of the issues with being a fully open source product, as opposed to being like a premium, a completely commercial product like Gravity Forms, where the only way you get support at all is if you're a paid customer. But we want to be in the open source space, and we want to be in the free space. We don't want to be purely in the commercial space. It's kind of fun, and it's something we're passionate about. So that's why we do this. Docs.getshopped.org. As our documentation project. And for people who are new to e-commerce or who want to experiment with our plugin, please feel free to head over to docs.getshopped.org and have a look. It's wikified, so people can actually help us writing the documentation as well. 2011, global learning. Oh, yeah. Like I said about going to Malaysia, people just do things differently there. I've met people here who, I've met one guy who was sort of talking to me about how PayPal isn't supported in his country, and I'm here to learn about that and how we can help. I think it's important for us to integrate with as many of your payment gateways as we can, and just learn. I want to soak up as much as I possibly can. God, what is that? I'm seeing things differently on my screen than you are. My Finder icon is taken over. I'm sorry. Community tools. If I was to start again, I would have all of these things in place from day one. We didn't know. A lot of these things weren't even there for us to use. We've got a mailing list, and probably around 150 to 200 emails per week get sort of sent between the developers around the world who are actually involved in the WP-eCommerce plugin. We've got our forums, like I said. Where there we've got a couple of paid support staff. and the open source community does a lot of the rest. We've got the docs, translations, using .mo and .po files for when you're creating a plugin is really important. We've got a dev chat each week. We use Git and Subversion to allow other developers to get on board and develop with us. Community portal, I have no idea why I put that there now. Why WordPress? I thought it's possible that there are people here who still aren't convinced that WordPress is the right tool for them. And why did we choose WordPress? I chose the first bullet point there, the framework for growth, because that was the term used on the Magento website, which is another open source e-commerce tool. And I thought it's not really a platform or a framework for growth because it's already so bloated and so big. It's not like WordPress, which is just a nice core that we can sort of build upon. It's unlike legacy software, it's easy to use, it's standards compliant. I'm thinking Zencart and OSCommerce here. The first pieces of e-commerce software that I personally tried using back before we created the WP-eCommerce plugin, they were a nightmare. And I can consider myself to be a bit of a geek, maybe not a programmer, but geeky enough to install somebody else's software and get it going. But I couldn't. They were just too hard. And I also like to think of a time before before Zencart and OSCommerce and Magento and WP-eCommerce, where basically to create an e-commerce site would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I think we've all come such a long way. So what does an e-commerce plugin do? And why the WP-eCommerce plugin? I think typically, I don't like to read from my presentations, but for the sake of making a point, I want to for this slide. It sounds simple, doesn't it? E-commerce. But if you break it down, e-commerce starts to look infinitely more complex. A good e-commerce solution provides you with the ability to add, edit products. This much is a given. Provides you with the ability to add tax rates. But if you break this down, we start to look at software that deals with tax for multiple countries. And if you break that down, you must consider multiple cities in those countries with different tax rates. You have different tax based on products with shipping and without shipping. Different tax for different types of goods, dangerous goods versus non-goods. That's an American thing. The possibilities go on. You can start to see why it is important to ensure good WordPress standards code to make it as extensible as possible so we can allow other developers to do all of the stuff that we don't have the resources to do ourselves. Now, this slide here really just illustrates, I think, much like WordPress, it's a small, tight core that's extendable. And we see the WP-eCommerce plugin. It does just enough. It does the right amount of stuff. And for everything else, we're trying to convince plugin developers to do that for us. And of course, sell the odd thing ourselves while we're at it. This has been the point of contention for many years. People kind of complaining to us, saying, "Are you allowed to sell GPL software?" Well, we are, and we do it because we have to pay the bills. And if we don't sell stuff, we're no longer sustainable. And then you don't know if we're going to be here tomorrow to support you. And for everything we can't do, we're creating our own community portal for other WordPress developers to come along and get involved. And some of those examples are the people who are sponsoring this event today, the Storefront Themes, the Coco, the Splashing Themes, there's Genesis Themes coming. And these guys, they're building businesses on top of our software, and some of them are doing okay as well. There was one guy who was selling a WP-eCommerce theme in Theme Forest, and he was getting, in the first month of business, he got $30,000 US. So it's a significantly big marketplace. Just wanted to have a quick look at finding a WordPress niche. A lot of the guys at work, they're are musicians, and so we kind of thought, right, what can we do to help make the whole e-commerce experience better for people selling music? So we've created a whole lot of plugins, and we've also created this theme, which is a Genesis child theme, which we haven't launched yet, but it's well underway. Some of the things somebody selling music might want that somebody selling t-shirts doesn't care about is, for instance, a play button that lets them actually upload preview tracks for their songs and then lets people listen to them online. So people, essentially, they click play, and we've got a player up there. And so in this particular theme, that's really simply a widget that somebody adds to a widgetized area within their WordPress theme, and it all just magically works. I call this slide the RIP, right-click and save as. During a WordCamp I went to a couple of years ago, I met some musicians over there who were like, we sell albums to people, but what we really hate is that when they buy an album off us, they have to right-click and save that track. Well, all the tracks, sometimes in worst case scenario, it could be 20, 30 times right-click, save as this track, right-click, save as this track. And musicians being musicians, they don't like that. And as a user, I don't like that either. So we created a plugin that uses the functionality inherent in most modern web browsers to actually download successfully purchased tracks into the web browser's temporary storage area, and then it will compile all of those files into one zip that the buyer can then download. And that's another little plugin we've made. And Amazon S3. So one of the other things we found out by talking to musicians selling stuff online in big files was that one of the most common complaints was that people would be selling files and their customers would be downloading these big files, sometimes 12 megs or greater, and then they would just be timing out. So, and the download would just break and stop. And to somebody who doesn't know anything about web servers, they're just it's just broken, it doesn't work. So what we did, and the reason why that is that a lot of web servers, if you have a cheap web hosting company, then there's going to be what they call a PHP timeout limit on any kind of downloadable file. So you're downloading a file, and if it takes longer than that limit, then it's just going to die, and your customers are never going to get the music files. And so musicians were calling us really angrily saying, why are our downloads breaking? And it's just because you've got a cheap web hosting company. There's actually nothing much we can do as a plugin developer to fix that, because that would involve actually tinkering with people's web servers. And sometimes we do that. We like to help. But for the most part, it's not practical for us to just sort of start jumping around and tweaking and tuning everybody's servers. So we created an Amazon S3 plugin, which means that musicians can use this plugin, take their music files and dump them in the cloud, and then associate those files with the tracks. And Amazon Web Services, there are no timeout limits. So if you're a musician, you can, or if you're selling any digital content or big files, you can feel safe that you're never going to, your users are never going to experience a download that just dies on them. And so that's kind of what we've done for the music industry. We've kind of gone, right, how can we ensure that from start to finish, people selling music online are catered for? So, like we're about to launch a marketplace, kind of like the Genesis marketplace for themes, where people can create e-commerce related plugins. We want people to create e-commerce related plugins, and we want you to sell them in our marketplace, and we'll help you sell them, and we'll take a cut, and you'll take a cut, and everybody will be happy. So we want people to look for niche opportunities, niche areas. Like take, for instance, a payment gateway in South Africa that perhaps we don't actually support. You could create that. You could give that to us. We could distribute that for you. We could either sell that or we could give it away for free. And I'd say give it away for free, because if we give more away for free, more people in Africa are going to be using e-commerce and WordPress. Benefits to the user. Everybody's heard of the Hello Dolly plugin. That doesn't really add any value to the user. So, you'd give that away. We're not going to help you try and sell a Hello Dolly plugin. We expect the code to be nice, and that's pretty much it. We're looking for people to join us, really. And the end, it's not, because we have a couple of giveaways. Yeah, so that's pretty much me.